we had was June, because unfortunately the August one had to be cancelled. Right. To receive apologies for absence.
Yep. Sorry, Councillor Williams. I have an apology for absence from Councillor Moskwa, who is on holiday, and I believe Councillor Stapleton is subbing on his behalf, and Councillor Money, who Councillor Stockwood has just indicated is running late and will be joining when she's able to. And I haven't heard from Councillor Leach.
I'll just message Councillor Leach to find out. Okay, right. Thank you. Right.
Are we accepting the apology?
Yes, we are.
Yep.
Thank you.
Nobody's got any issues, so that's carried. Right. Item 2, to receive any declarations of interest. For me, it will be the usual one put on, in this case, item 5 and item 6 as being a coach at Bingham Rugby Club.
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to highlight that I am the council's representative for Linear Park, which will be mentioned in at least a tree report, and probably maybe some others as well.
Yeah, the tree report and item 13 as well. Do we have any others? No, righto. Item 3, to sign the minutes of the meeting held on the 9th of June 2020. Take everybody's been able to read those.
Yes.
Has anybody got any issues, if you can remember that far back to when it was? Okay. For anybody against or abstaining? No. I'll take that as carried, and I'll sign them at a later date. Item 4, to note Councillor Sims' resignation from the committee. That's all we've got, and it will be. Just want to say, on behalf of the committee, thank you to Councillor Sims for all her contribution and work on whilst being a member of this committee since coming on to Bingham Town Council. Okay, item 5, to receive an update in relation to the redevelopment of the Win Hill site, which I understand we've got a presentation document to show on screen. So either share it if you're able to. If not, we have found out that Councillor Stockwood can share it as well. Righto, Bill.
Okay.
I suggest that we suspend standing orders so representatives from Bingham Rugby Club can speak. Are we all okay with that? Yep, Bill. Go over to you, Mr. Packer and Mr. Perry.
Okay, so this presentation covers the next 2 agenda items, to be honest, so I wouldn't. So really, to start with, we've had a couple of meetings within the club and a couple of meetings with contractors. And so what I'm looking to do is just give you a basic update, but to make sure that you've all got the same level of understanding, just to go back through a few slides to show what we were doing and where we were hoping to go. So that's an artist's impression of the face of the building as we went for planning permission. So the left hand side of it was an extension, the middle bit was a refurbishment, and the right hand side was an extension. So if you want to move on to the next slide, John. Sorry, it's in a PDF, so I have to click on this way. Okay, how do I move this blooming bar so I can see what's at the bottom? Anyway, okay, so just looking at the community space, the proposal that we were looking for was to have 2 community rooms providing 1 large space, but to be flexible so that 2 users can use it at once, both having access to the bar, it being able to create 1 large room to have a meeting and conference room, to have a kitchen, to have increased car parking space, is to relieve the congestion around Brendan Grove, to have single level access for disability wise, which we have at the moment anyway, but it wouldn't be going away from that, and to have cycle storage. So what you've got there, as you're looking at it, the yellow part is the existing room, the brown part it will be the new room. And then above the brown part, we've got a kitchen, a bar, and we've got extra toilets. So if you want to go on to the next slide, John, please. So on the other side of the building, we were looking to double the sports capability of the building. So that should hopefully allow the continued development of both the minis, the juniors and senior rugby down at the pavilion. 4 changing rooms as well would allow more than one sport. It would also allow different kinds of abilities to change. So we were looking at mixed ability rugby, potential to expand and have girls only teams, but it wouldn't. So what you have, the brown shaded area will be the 2 main changing rooms. Then you've got a grey shaded area which provide 2 additional changing rooms, and potentially a little bit underneath there which provides first aid facilities. The section on the left hand side, which is the white bit, is the existing building, but that would need changing and knocking around so that the existing changing rooms get changed into officials changing, and it provides suitable a plant room available to power the whole building and look after the whole building. So next slide, John. Okay, so update, probably won't surprise you. Something happened called COVID, and literally it's turned everything upside down, to be perfectly honest. Trying to keep my positive pants on, but complete roller coaster. I've almost walked away from it several times just because of the issues that you come across and the challenges. Reality is it's just taking up a huge amount of time for a few of us. Thankfully, there's 2 or 3 of us extra that have come onto the team, and it can be very demoralising at the moment on occasions. So you're probably aware that grants were ruled out from the RFU quite early doors, and we were waiting into July before we could apply for loans. The Rushcliffe obviously took the 106 monies, so that then took extra time getting the public works loan. We then suffered delays with the RFU architect approving the plans that related to the changing rooms. The COVID provided further pressure on funding within the RFU, which led to the RFU probably making around about 130, 150 people redundant across the whole of the UK. Obviously, we've had delays in the public works loan, not the loan, but just the request and the sanction. So that was delaying going out to tender, and when we did go out to tender, we had a few potential contractors not interested, and then the tenders that we did go out to, all of them came out above our initial estimates as to what we were looking for at 600,000. The RFU has taken a further turn for the worse, in that now that we can't have crowds and spectators at games, the RFU's finance and budgets have had a huge hole blown in, and the ability to secure funding from the RFU is now effectively nil. We've had 3 facility managers in less than 9 months, and we've got Sport England, the local investment scheme, Severn Trent, all these local funding opportunities, all of them sort of having COVID priorities rather than capital priorities. We are hoping that the LIS fund is probably beginning to move, but As you can appreciate there, just from that slide, I can't really see the bottom bit because I've got a bar that's across it. So I think it says, what can we do to create change? What does it else say? Because I can't see it at the bottom.
It's got, do we defer, do we do nothing, do we
Okay.
walk away from the project?
Okay, so that's some of the stark realities and some of the stark conversations we have had within the club since June. We want to do something. Clearly, we want to do something, but sometimes when you get kicked in the teeth a little bit, it's a huge challenge. When we thought we'd got everything, all the ducks in a row, then one of them gets knocked out. So if you go on to the next slide, John. Okay, so what we sort of decided is that we need to get something moving. We need to roll along. We're not going to sit on the side and defer it. So what we've done, we've met with a groundworks company. The area marked in red is the area of the project, but primarily if you take away the building, it was the idea of the proposed car park. Now what we've determined quite early on is that plan was to have one level car park, which if you can picture what it's like at the club at the moment, you've got the existing car park, which is probably about 1 metre higher than the ground on the other side where the grass is. So where that yellow line is roughly around about where the hedge is at the moment. So we've been talking to a grounds company to say, right, how can we do this and how can we potentially split the car park into 2 levels? The little bit to the left near the 2 little trees, that was designated coach parking. Why Rushcliffe decided that we have to designate coach parking, I really don't know. Can't remember the last time we had a coach down there, but essentially it would be car parking that we would reserve for a coach if we had to have coaches down there. But that goes straight across where the ground splits into 2 levels. So we would look to probably replace that and put it somewhere else at the top. And what we were thinking of is just having like a small ramp and then having the car park area provided as being what they call grasscrete rather than tarmac, which is essentially a sort of a hardcore surface. And on top of that, you would put either concrete or plastic blocks, and then it would allow grass to grow through it. So it wouldn't have the appearance of just a huge tarmac area, but it would be strong enough to support vehicles to car park. By doing it that way, we think we're going to improve the drainage and the runoff, because it won't just be tarmac with water pouring off it. It should alleviate issues that we've got with potential tree protection plans. What we will need to do is, though, look and discuss where we're going to put trenches for floodlights. So if you go on to the next slide, please. So I've tried to show here 2 potential routes where we would look to put a trench for floodlight cabling. The issue that we do have is the storm drain that goes nicely diagonally across the field. So having spoken with the contractor, they have distinct concerns about taking the cables underneath that storm drain. Don't want to create more issues than we're trying to solve. So they would prefer to go around the field just once, but going over the top of the storm drain and probably put reinforcing over the cabling rather than going underneath it. What it would mean then, though, is it would mean going across the pitch, at least in one scenario, to light one of the floodlight columns on the far side to the right of the storm drain. If you go to the next slide for me. Okay, so what we've done, we've approached several contractors and we went back to 3 of them and invited them to come to a meeting with open minds. They came with some concerns regarding the building, but over and above with everything, they were all positive, and they were advised of the budget and the funding situation. So despite coming in early doors with tenders above what we were looking to spend, they all came in positive, and through just very basic conversations with them probably about 3 weeks ago, we were all looking at coming into a sort of a 600k budget roughly. They all provided, we asked them to come up with a split as best they could with regards to how much it would be for doing the sports side of things, how much it would be to do the refurb, and how much it would be to do the new community side of things. What came out very clearly is that simply just to refurb the existing building is going to cost as much as it would do to build an extension, just one bit of the extensions. So hindsight, probably one of the better options might have been to level it and start again, but we are where we are now at the moment. All 3 of the contractors were confident of a program of works of between 26 weeks. One of the contractors was asking for a pre-construction agreement as well as a construction agreement, so that sort of made us think a little bit. All 3 of them, though, did have a concern regarding the integrity of the building. They do have concerns that once they take the roof off the main structure, that it becomes incredibly unstable. So one of the things that we would have to do would be to get a structural survey undertaken, which probably around £4,000, something like that. So we're looking, some of the conversations we had were, do we keep it or do we rebuild it? Do we rebuild it in a new location? So build something modular closer to the pitch, and once that's been built, we then level the existing pavilion. Do we build less? Then we started looking at single pitch roofs, simplifying the designs. Fortunately, a lot of the conversations we were looking at there, new planning permissions would probably be needed. So a little bit reluctant to go down that route on the basis it took us as long as it did to get where we are now. They were one of the key things that we do want to make sure is that the pavilion stays open for as much as it can for the existing users. Some of them came up with ideas to provide temporary buildings, just like little porta cabins for ongoing use. One of the contractors came up with an idea which hopefully which would allow them to continue to use the main club room for as long as possible. We had another select suggestion that instead of the type of contract that we were looking at, we go for something that's called an option C. I don't fully understand what that is, but essentially it means that everything is open book so that we can then just go to the contractor and find out everything that he's doing with regards to what his profit margins are and everything like that. It was suggested that we go back to revisit the planning permission so that we can class it as a new build / rebuild, which means that it will be better for VAT purposes on our side of things, in that the contractors would deal with all the VAT, not ourselves, but we would need alterations to the planning permissions. As I've mentioned, we will need surveys to de-risk the build. Other parts of the areas where they need to make sure is what the ground is like underneath. So we need to drill some holes to get an idea of what the soil is underneath, although most of them have done preliminary investigations thinking that it is quite a clay area around the field. A buttress wall, as far as I understand it, is sort of building a false wall within the existing club room, which would enable one of the contractors to build the community extension at the end without getting in the way of existing users, and then be able to sort of move the existing users potentially into the new room whilst they refurb the main room. So the big sort of area again where we've sort of changed our ideas a little bit is to focus on it being one big room with a partition, so that we can make it 2 rooms rather than 2 rooms to be able to make it 1 room. Sounds a bit bizarre and a bit arse about face, so to speak, but the way that we'd put it forward to the contractors was that it was 2 entirely separate rooms with full acoustic insulation, and it turns out that that is a rather expensive solution to the problem. And when we start thinking about what we don't have huge amounts of people saying, yes, we need to have 1 room at the same time as someone's using another room. A lot of the demand is for more space rather than 2 smaller rooms. So we think that's probably a better solution, to build a bigger room, but just have a basic partition. The extension, if you can remember one of the earlier slides, had a kitchen built onto the end. That was a change that we put in the early doors when we realised that the architect's plans had extended into the Rushcliffe Borough Council boundaries. So it was put onto an end rather than within the existing thing. But what we're looking at is if we take that away and incorporate it into a galley type kitchen bar, we would remove the need for the end build. One of the contractors as well sort of came up with quite some creative sort of sponsorship and supply opportunities as well. All looking again at different types of roof, flat roofs, competitive tenders for contractors as well, so that we can get the best possible price on supplies. And so we do think that we can get a notable savings per square metre from what was put forward in the original tenders. So if you go to the next slide, please. So when I talk about some of the possible changes that we're looking at on the community space, you can see the red lines are areas where we'd look to probably remove. So that's the kitchen on the left hand side and a large toilet block on the bottom of the community room. What that toilet block would mean that on the current plans as it is, we have 3 large toilet blocks throughout the whole building. So again, we started thinking, do we really need 3 large toilet blocks if we're going to have 1 main room but an ability to split it? There is a potential within the cellar area to put a small toilet, so that's an opportunity. But what we potentially might look to do is lose a small amount of area in the yellow community room area. Now that at the moment isn't, because at the moment in that area it's all bar, so we're not losing anything that we haven't already got. It was something that we were looking to propose. So the kitchen area would go along that north top wall, and the bar would go alongside it. So primarily looking at 1 room with a simple split, reduce the toilets, pose the question, how often will we have 2 entirely separate functions? And then what we would have always as well, we would always have a sort of a 10 to 12 seat meeting room still available to provide entirely separate meetings if necessary. So if you go on to the next slide, please. So the big area of concern, without the funding likely to come from Sport England, RFU, it's unlikely that we're going to be able to complete any of the sports changing options unless we can get really creative with one of the contractors. We have to look at the mechanical and electrical engineering side of things so that we can ensure that the building does have the capability to be expanded if we put changing rooms on extra at the end. But what we're looking at is, rather than having 4 changing rooms from the outset, we could potentially put porter cabins. We could potentially just build a shell and fit it out later. We could build a shell and maybe fit out 2 rooms, or even just fit out 2 rooms and just put the groundworks in for the other room. So a lot of questions still to ponder, really. Okay, if you go to the next slide. Okay, so the last slide, having spoke to the contractors, contractor 1, we felt it was too big a company and they may be a challenge to work with. The second contractor we met had basically a background in residential. They had lots of good ideas though. They were very keen and they were the lowest of the original tenders that came in. The third contractor, we have bottomed out some recent issues that they've had, but their tender was probably the most thought through and the most detailed of the first stages that we went through. However, having met them all on the same day and gone through all their presentations, we decided to work with company 2, which was a company known as HTC Construction, and they are based in Radcliffe-on-Trent. So again, we're trying to keep it local. So we've approached them and they are happy to work with us. They know full well the funding issues that we've got and what we need to address, so we're not committed at all at the moment. What we have been able to do from the day of conversations with the contractors is cherry pick ideas from all the presentations. Definitely need to get a engineer on board to look at the structural integrity of the building, because essentially it is a wooden building. If everything fell into line, we think we could break ground in February, but really big question mark there. So we've got a funding shortfall. Questions about where can we go for other avenues of funding. Questions about, are the town council okay if we only go ahead with the community side of the build? And are you okay with the community side of the build that's put forward there? It essentially gives you what we were proposing at the outset, but slightly differently. We have to look at an inbuilt capability to expand. So we are looking at quite a detailed phases. So don't think it's going to be all done in one. Phase 1 hopefully would be putting some floodlights in. Phase 2, hopefully getting the car park sorted. Phase 3, potentially looking at the community side of things. Phase 4, a little bit around the sporting side of things. So final bullet there is Bingham Town Council able to assist in any way that we can look to get the full build done. If we go back to one of the earlier slides, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. You know, we asked the questions amongst ourselves: do we defer it? Do we put it on hold? Do we just put it aside? So if you can just go to the next slide, John, please. So where do we go from now? Where do we go now, really? So certainly one of the things that we determined is that if we do nothing, absolutely nothing at the moment, there will be in some stage significant expense to refurbish the existing pavilion just as it stands at the moment, because it's a wooden structure with an old felt roof. So if we do nothing, there's significant work to do there. If we go ahead, we need the commitment of everyone, of all those involved in it. We've got to ask the questions, you know, can we do it all? Possibly not. So it's in phases, in stages, and it's really to sort of take these discussions forward with yourselves now. We've got to look at the planning, review the planning permissions at the moment with regards to seeing how we can adopt them for VAT purposes, and potential variations on car parking. So as I said, sort of the very first bit, floodlights, and then start looking at the car park and the pavilion. When I put this presentation together, we were wanting to start work on the floodlights and the car park, and if some ways we could sort of do that from our own resources, oblique some sort of outside funding. Some of the initial costs that have come back would be prohibitive for us to do the car park the way that the groundworks wanted to do. So we are looking to pull in significant number of favours from people to see what is the art of the possible. So it's really now a bit of an open forum really for us to take stock, just have discussions around the table and sort of ask what your thoughts are as a rec committee as to the way forward. You know, we're still committed to want to do it, despite me saying that, you know, there's been occasions where we've wanted to throw in the towel. But, you know, we do want to do it. We do want to get on with it. So they're the stark realities at the moment. COVID has blown a huge hole in what we wanted to do. And it's not showing any signs of abating at the moment. So open for comments, open for questions or any thoughts.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that presentation. I can appreciate that it does seem like it's been, like you say, very disheartening with what's been happening and everything. I'll open it up to councillors for any comments or questions, because we have got standing orders suspended at the moment. You can indicate with either a physical hand or a virtual hand, please. Councillor Leach.
Hello, good evening, and sorry I was late to start with. My PC was playing up, so I am here. I'm sorry you're feeling disheartened. Please don't give up. We will support you in any way we possibly can. Yeah? Just don't give up. We need you. Thank you.
Any other comments? Otherwise, I'll go and give my initial thoughts on it. Is anybody up? Okay. I can see with the different. There's a lot of things that you've also discovered from talking to contractors, like that about the state of the building and the VAT issue with the planning permission. Is it kind of to find out what the state is of the building and is it using this and just throwing an opportunity to think of a whole new building or plan? I know with the existing building was splitting the community room. Is it being the outline of this building ultimately fit for purpose on what you're wanting? As a community side, would it work with potentially 2 users and 2 rooms? It wants that. I know it's that you had people wanting it, but wanting a bigger space. But is it potentially that because of there being the opportunity to have 2 spaces, because the attraction of it was with those, there were 2 self-functioning rooms with a kitchen and toilets for each.
There wouldn't have been a kitchen for each. There was just one kitchen at the end. The reality is some of the bigger events that we've had, it has just been one big event with one event using the bar. I don't see 2 parties of say 40 in each party wanting a bar. So I do think the attraction is having a bigger room that we can split out if necessary, and having the entirely separate committee and meeting room. I think it would be a terrific advantage. There's like the U3A have been in touch with us, and they would certainly want smaller rooms rather than either of the 2 big rooms. But we do see that what is on offer at the moment still meets what we said we were planning to do at the outset. It is just identifying, making sure that we make the most of the asset at the end of the day. I think from the conversations we had with the contractors, if we did a complete new build, the cost would be far in excess and far north of 600,000 or 700,000, 800,000. And I think as an option, I don't see that as being an option or an ability to get funding for that sort of money.
Has there been any indication of kind of in order to do this new proposal of the development, what kind of it would look like as a costing? Because you mentioned that going with the to 600, it's more than that.
I mean, certainly the conversations we had with the contractors, as I said, we asked them to split it into three. So new community build, refurb community build and sports, and they were coming out around 200 each for each section. So 400k, we think we would get pretty much what we were hoping for with the community build. There would have to be an element of works undertaken so that we've got the infrastructure there to do the sports facility, the sports changing as we expand, in the hope that we could potentially get that. There would have to be a little bit of bitting and bobbing, I think, because without a long-term opportunity for changing rooms, I think we would have to leave the existing changing rooms as they are, which would compromise the large plant room and things like that. So the M&E company is looking at that at the moment to see how we could work around it and see what we could do. But it may mean, much like what I'm thinking of Ashfield Rugby Club, they've had porter cabins as changing rooms for probably 3 come 4 years, as I have 1 or 2 other clubs as well that have done extensions, but certainly not for changing rooms at the outset. I think that would be utopia at the outset to start with. But is it something that the town council feel you could still support if we only spent just over, say, 400,000 and provide you with 2/3 of what was done? Does that fulfil the obligations of the consultation?
I think this is kind of questions that would needing research, which I can see the town clerk's indicating her hand to ask something.
Yes, if I may, that's certainly one area we would need to look into. I mean, the public consultation that we went out with was with regard to increasing the precept, but we certainly built a picture around that in terms of what the money would be used and contributed towards. So I would want to speak with some colleagues at NALC and also PWLB to seek their advice if council decided they wanted to investigate the community aspect of the work to Win Hill.
See, the way that we were looking at it is pretty much the 400k provided all the community side of things, and the funding that we were trying to get through the RFU, Sport England and others would be the sports side of things. So if you literally look at it that way, you know, the increase of 400k on a public works loan, you're still getting an increased asset and an improved asset. The concern that we have is that when we get a structural engineering and he says, well, the building's probably only got 5 years to last anyway in its present format. So we need to be doing something at some stage. So
Yeah, I think the main point to make, to add to what Chris has said, is that as Chris has just said, for £400,000, we're delivering. We will be able to deliver on the promise that you're going to get an enhanced community facility, which is really important for Bingham, and especially at that end of Bingham as well. The problem, as Chris has highlighted, is because a lot of funding organisations aren't releasing any funds at the moment, especially on the sporting side. That's why we need to phase that. But in terms of the community side of things, we are hopeful that we can that the public works loan would actually cover the cost of that work. And as I said to you, what you're going to get is an enhanced facility, which is what we've gone out to the public of Bingham for. We've said to them, this is what we're going to provide. So they're actually going to get what we said we were going to provide and what the town council have supported with us in the past. Though obviously some of the other things might be phased.
Councillor Stockwood. Still muted.
Technology, eh?
There you go.
Oh, I managed it. Thank you very much. Just to be clear, it was the town clerk very ably presenting the slides. I didn't want to interrupt you. You were in such a fine flow, but she does have a middle name of John, but that may or may not be true. I have no idea. Right, moving on to the serious questions. Can you just be specific about what we can and cannot do right now, and what steps we're going to take into the future? As I understood it, you were funding the floodlights, and you've got a way forward of doing the floodlights. You've got a separate planning permission. So the floodlights is go. You're all fine to do the floodlights, and that's all right then, right?
Floodlights.
The second thing is you're talking about a car park, the car park, but you're now looking at potentially a different design of a car park. Do you have pre-planning application advice suggesting that a changed car park design is within the existing design? Or is it something you're going to have to go back to and get a separate planning permission for a new car park design? Have you gone down that route for the car park? With regards to this structural survey that you now is a precondition for progress, do you have a way of financing that? What's the timescales for it for being a deliverable? Is that a barrier to moving forward with any other aspect of the project? That first thing we need to do now is sort out this structural survey. So can we focus down on things that can happen? Are the floodlights, because that's going to, that's within your capacity, and you can keep moving forward with that. You're looking at changes for car park design. I think you need to check with pre-planning application advice to the borough as to whether or not that constitutes a different design or can be implemented within the existing design. I'd certainly suggest that it's probably going to have a different drainage arrangement to the previous one. And your structural survey, can we have some more details around that? And you've talked about, there's the last slide shown was car park and floodlights XXXXX cost. Do we have a cost for, I'm assuming that because the car park's a completely different design, your costs on that are still unknown. So what steps can we take to move forward to a position where we have a set of options where we can say this route forward, option A is a way forward, option B is a way forward, option C is a way forward. I think overall you'll find that the town council is fully a keen supporter of improved community facilities. It's disappointing that that's not bringing in additional sports grants that would lift up and people see the whole project as a benefit across multiple things. But I'm sure there is an enthusiasm to try and get us to a point where we can say we have a set of options to choose from, a ways forward for the project, which have been worked out, A, B or C, for the council to consider as a way forward. I'm rambling on a bit, but the specifics there, the floodlights, the car parks, the structural survey, the ways forward. Can we focus in on those a little bit, please? Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. So floodlights is something that we definitely want to progress, because that would be an enabler for everything. And within the resources that we have at the moment, we're just waiting on a few final costs with regards to groundworks and things like that. So we are hopeful that that'll go forward. And as you mentioned, it is party to the separate planning permission. With regards to the car park, it's something that we are planning to sit down and talk with the architect about as to how we can sort of take that forward. And we are looking at other alternative and cost-effective ways of extending the car park. The structural survey, again, we are going to have to sit down with the architect, because as it stands at the moment, I don't know whether or not we get a contractor, the contractor that we've chosen to do it and do it that way, or we get our own structural survey in. I know the architect has got a potential supplier contractor in place, so it's something that we will have to take forward with regards to conversations with the architect. With regards to sort of going forward and funding, we have got a further meeting, or an initial meeting, with the new RFU structure who deal with funding and facilities improvement. That's not until mid-November, so we might have a better idea at that stage. One of the things that hopefully we might be hoping that the council could help us with is sort of unlocking any doors with regards to any other potential 106 funding that might be lying around out there. I know when we go back to the meeting that we had, where did we have it? At the Methodist Church. I think we had several potential 106 pots that are in and around Bingham. I don't know whether there's any still available that we could tap into that might prove the unlocking of certain things. But as I do admit that the structural survey is one of the key things that we are going to have to look at. We're probably looking at around about £4,000 for that. And it's really, I think this meeting is to sort of gauge your views to make sure that you are still wanting to support what we're doing. Ultimately, it's, you know, yes, you're taking the loan down, but at the end of the day, we are spending it on an asset that will remain that of the town council. It's not an asset of the rugby club. So it is to gauge your appetite for us wanting to do more. So I don't want to spend heaps of time going into it and then we turn around and say, no, we're not going to do this, because as I say, we've had several disheartening conversations with certain people and certain contractors, and yeah, it saps your energy, to be truthful.
I think as you said, that it's a Bingham Town Council asset and all that type of thing. I think for the council, some council would want to know that the building's sound, and any development that goes around it, that the actual structure is sound for it to be built on and against going forward.
Gareth, what a structural engineer would do, he would sort of come forward with proposals as to what is needed, because the key thing is when we take the roof off the existing building and what that reveals. So some of the conversations that we've had with the contractors is that essentially, you know, they'll probably put a steel shell up around it, and this sort of brought one of the contractors round to this question of, it is almost a complete rebuild. It's not an extension. It's two new builds and a rebuild, which is why one of the conversations we need to have with the architect is about revising the planning permissions. But reality is, we wouldn't start doing any building work or any alterations on it if the structural survey was saying this is crazy, don't do it, or anything like that. And then that would have to put a halt on everything, and we would have to rethink what we did and go forward. So it's a prerequisite that we have to get that done and know where we stand. We don't want to start building and then start unearthing a can of worms.
Councillor Stapleton.
Yeah, I was just going to echo what you said then. I mean, the structural engineer, to see, you know, what you're working with. I'm sure, you know, councillor will backing you, but the structural engineer, I think, to go forward to give you, you know, some sort of idea on what you're going to be building on, or what's going to happen. I think that chap will let you know, won't he?
Yeah, yeah, certainly. Again, I think the prime issue that we've got is with funding. So if we tick the box on the structural engineer, if we tick the box on the floodlights, and we tick the box on the planning permission, is the 400k still going to be there to do 2/3 of the building? That's the root cause of the question. And
that's that's the question that we've got to now go back and research to see if what has been submitted and what would be part of our application, because essentially, as you're saying, there's potential changes that would be in it. It is kind of what we've submitted to the public, and I think quite rightly the public in principle and the council of building a community facility this end of Bingham, we are all in favour of. There's nobody is not saying that. It's just these kind of changes to it that we've just got to double check that doesn't cause any issues with submitting the application, because there is quite stringent tick boxes, what has gone out to the public already, and if it's then that we're taking money against a different design, we just wouldn't want them to turn around and raise questions. That's all my concern is, which is where we've got to find out.
From what I've shown you tonight, it's not a radical redesign. It's just tweaking here that takes out an expensive part, tweaking here that takes out another expensive part, another bit that takes out an expensive part. But the reality is 400k will probably only get us 2/3 of what we were originally put out there. But that other third wasn't going to be funded by the council. That other third was going to be funded by other parties and our own fundraising. So, you know, that's the slight conundrum. Yes, you might not get the full whack at the outset, but you will still get the increased value of a better facility.
Just one other small point to make is obviously that you know, with the floodlights and whatever, that actually will enable us to do maybe more for the mini rugby, which we only run obviously daytime at the moment on a Sunday. So there will be some community and sporting benefits from actually having the floodlights up and running, because we can then do more. I mean, obviously the changing rooms, as we're saying, will be phased, but they will come. It's just at the moment the RFU, on whom we were hoping to get quite a bit of money from at the moment, are just have some financial problems, but we're hoping that those will be overcome fairly soon. But as Chris said, with the £400,000, you are going to get what we promised right at the outset, which was a really good enhanced community facility at that end of Bingham, which is what we and the town council have promised, in inverted commas, that we would deliver on this.
Okay. I think from all of this is, in order to move forward, is that there is a lot of questions like yourselves have raised that you need to find out about the structure of the building. You've mentioned that you got a meeting in November with a representative from the RFU to do with funding, so you won't know the position of the RFU until then. And as we all know, it's a changing landscape in the sporting world quite quickly. One other thing is, I think we're needing kind of another meeting just about either, if it's going to be the next rec one, which I think is due in December, is to try and go and review what the actual stance is, because as I say, there's a lot of questions here. We as councillors can't speculate on will the 400 be there. We've gone through the survey, we've gone to the public, which came out in support. We have just got to kind of make sure that what our submission will be, and outlining due to COVID implications, there's have to be a review of the building. And I totally agree with, again, in principle, what you're still delivering is what has been set out. It's just how the people that will be giving us the money view it. And it's just double checking with those side of things. The only other thing is, in order to try and speed some of the conversations along, is either if kind of would it be beneficial to have some councillors in order to speak to, rather than just keep coming back to recreation and back to this committee? If we had like a working group with yourselves to try and discuss some of these items.
Certainly going forward, we need to establish some form of governance.
Yeah.
And that, as you say, we can't be doing, once we started moving along, we can't be having to refer to a rec committee every couple of months or something like that. That won't give us the answers that we need to make decisions and go forward. So we do need a governance group to set up so that can be done. Sharon.
Ultimately, what I'm proposing wouldn't be able to give you the definite answers. It would still have to go through a full council, but it's kind of a working group type of thing. Town Clerk, you got your hand raised.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Williams. As part of the governance, I was going to suggest, in any case, if PWLB and it is amenable to council to proceed with this, that ultimately we had a joint project board in any case, given there's the community aspect. So it would be basically following those lines of having a joint working group to take that forward.
I think that's an excellent suggestion from the chair, because it's a good way of moving forward, and we need to do that anyway. And as you say, the Public Works Loan Board would want to see that happening anyway. I mean, we probably only need sort of half a dozen people, maybe the most, maybe less than that. But I think that would be very good.
Okay.
Well, certainly we've had 3 councillors on other projects in order to progress them, like we've got currently going on at Witchwood Road Park play area. So there's that kind of thing. If there's representatives from the Rugby Club and from the council, so I think there'll be something that would have to be ratified at a full council meeting for us to do that, for delegate kind of thing, in order to set that up. This committee won't be able to kind of do that, but that's part of a recommendation that I'm willing to put forward if councillors are happy with that.
Can I just ask a couple of other questions?
Yes, sure.
The first question, the Scouts have gone very quiet with us, probably because they can't go out and they can't meet and they can't go camping or whatever. But I know, 2 years ago, the Scouts were sort of wanting to do their own build. Clearly, I think based on what we've experienced, funding for another kind of hut is probably non-existent, or anything like that. But I don't know whether or not there's any potential funding around by linking in to the Scouts. But probably the big question and the elephant in the room here, and I'll ask the question now, is there any appetite from Bingham Town Council to fund the whole project?
I think again, that will be a full council decision that would have to go, because of this committee. We will have interests in recreation and amenities, which is why I'll come on to this. That kind of a question would have to be put to full council as part of the ongoing discussions around this. But certainly, yeah, that is an option. Like not doing anything is an option as well, and doing like you do is part of it. But yeah, certainly if that was the case, then it would have to be that a new survey would have to go out, and we would have to do all of those steps that we've done previously all of that would have to go out to the community, because any increase would be a new precept increase because of the loan and the increase in the loan. But also the council may then feel that it is having exact costs and a bigger involvement in it because of funding the whole thing, whereas currently it was the 400k, and then any of the like you're saying, the sporting side was going to come from sporting funding. I mean, Councillor Stockwood, sorry, got your hand raised, sorry.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. But, I think you're quite right that you said many of the things I was going to say, that it's one of the options that could be considered, but we need to know what those options are. That going up to a new amount would obviously be a new process with the PWLB. So, but there is an option of going upwards. There's an option of staying the same and what that would get, and there are other options around a more phased approach with regards to the car park and portions of the site being developed. So it is the case that we can work, some work to develop the options would be a good idea, which is what I said at the beginning. The specifics of what you've got is around a £4,000 structural survey. Is the rugby club going to pay that then? And when is that? Or, I mean, have you saying you're going to go out to quotes to get a structural survey of the existing building?
The architect has got his own structural engineer, and potentially HTC have got their own structural engineer. So it's a conversation that we need to have between all sort of 3 or 4 parties of us.
Just final point is that with regards to timescale, it looks like the full council's in on the 15th of December. Okay. And then your next recreation immunities is in January. So, I mean, if you're looking at going back to planning, you're looking at an 8 to 12 weeks process minimum. Yeah. You've got meetings with RFU in November. I understand you want to be breaking ground in February, but that's quite an ambitious timescale.
Breaking ground in February was everything falling together.
Right.
Literally everything falling down together. So, and all the ducks in a row. So there's plenty of things for us to do. If possible, I mean, certainly we wouldn't want to draw anything down unless we knew we were going ahead. So it wouldn't be a case of, part drawing down and then stopping. We would have to be fully committed. Conversations that we will have with the RFU would be around, potentially if we can get the full 600, can we then come to the RFU to retrospectively fund it? I don't know whether that's an opportunity or a possibility. I really don't know. So we won't have those won't know until we've had those conversations. But they're going to be some hard conversations, but that's what we're going to do. So certainly, as I see it, we've got plenty of things that we need to do to start with, and then obviously a few things for within the council to sort of discuss amongst themselves as we go forward. I wouldn't necessarily want to just turn up to the full council on the 15th of December with it being cold on everyone's plates, apart from the rec committee. So I think we'd need to warm people up a bit on that side of things. Certainly any help that with anyone's got any contacts within anywhere that please let us have them, and we will approach them with regards to funding around and taking it forward. But definitely is what we are committed to do is move forward on the floodlights, and then all those other things that we spoke about, we'll take them forward and then keep you fully sort of up to date with.
Right.
So I'm trying to be positive whilst being accepting where we are.
Yeah. Thank you. Have you got something more to add, Councillor Stockwood?
I think Mr. Packer said at the beginning that his presentation was about the next 2 items on the agenda. So does that include the pitch drainage?
The next bit's pretty much on the pitch drainage, which I didn't cover, and that was one of the things I had going on the slides. The reality is we've put a lot of the pitch drainage all on hold. We've not got any go ahead to play rugby. Earliest we're going to be told is going to be January. Reality, do I really think we're going to be playing even this season before the summer? Personally, I don't think we will. Not at our level anyway. So pitch drainage at this moment in time isn't a necessity for us to go spending £8,000 or £10,000 on. Certainly what you're doing at the moment with regards to the regular cutting has certainly helped in the appearance and the looking after of it. So at the moment, the new potential new land drains, we're just sort of putting that to one side at the moment.
With that regular cutting, I understand that was from the kind of the application to the RFU and having the it's all part of maintaining healthy grass. Yeah. So there's healthy grass, there's drainage. So the regular cutting of it is one big thing that the RFU groundsman said. So if we did nothing and we just let it grow and grow and grow and cut it once every 2 or 3 months, then it's just not going to do any good at all, and we'd just be back to square one. So the regular maintenance that we're doing on the moment is certainly helped, and now the weather's changed a bit, we're going to be able to get our aerator out on the pitch as well. So yeah, okay. Mr. Perry, you got your virtual hand.
Yeah, Joe, just one other small point. I mean, yeah, the other thing we can, presumably we can do, which you raised, instigated earlier on, is maybe we get this sort of small working group up and running. Presumably we don't have to wait. Do we have to wait until the full council meeting to be able to do that, or can we at least get something going informally and from now on, rather than having to wait till December?
My understanding of how it will work, and I'll probably get told if I'm wrong, it will have to be at the next full council, because it's the full council that has the authority to create those groups.
We couldn't get something going sort of informally by
no, because councillors potentially would be working without the authority of the council. Okay. Doing that. At the time being, everything would still have to come through the town clerk until that is created. But at the moment, it won't be until that full council on the 15th of December.
But you feel that there will probably be support for that, bearing in mind that's what's already happening with other projects?
I think so, yeah. I think there would be. In order to get this going, and for you to speak to councillors on what we're doing and what's going on with the project, rather than, like what Mr. Packer says, having to wait every 2 months for this committee to come round and to meet, and then it costs us like more. With this group, it would be that we can meet potentially as and when is required. Okay. And then if anything needs to go to council and it's felt that it would have to come to the attention of full council, it then can be implemented.
No, that's fine. Thank you. I just wanted to clarify. I wasn't quite sure how it all worked.
No, that's fine. Not a problem.
Okay. And can I just clarify that you're happy for us to proceed with the floodlights, just at least to take things forward without necessarily having to refer back to you for any other things?
Yeah, to mine, yes, unless any other council has got any views, but I think you've had all that agreed and in place and planning permission, so yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So I propose to reinstate standing orders, as we've discussed 5 and 6 now.
Can I just say a formal thank you to everybody on behalf of the rugby club for your time as well. Just before we leave the meeting, well, I'm going to leave the meeting. I'm not quite sure what Chris can do, but yeah, seriously, and thanks for all your support in the past as well and going forward.
And I just want to echo everything. Thank you for your efforts and time in coming on tonight and everything that you've been doing with the redevelopment. It does seem like it has been a frustrating time, and I can say from first-hand experience seeing Chris on a Sunday morning, I don't know if that's just the effect of the little ruggers or if it's just a greater issue. But I do know he says it's chaotic on a Sunday morning for him. So So thank you very much for your time, gentlemen.
Okay.
Okay. So just going on that, out of it is I think for us is to investigate kind of the PWLB loan, to recommend that in order to progress, and then kind of to have a kind of a working group in order to set up is to try and progress this with issues, and also with options going forward, for the project to then come back to full council on what they are, and I think this can be a number of issues like we've outlined, is do nothing, do some of it, do all of it, or knock it all down and build something completely new. Ultimately, they're all the options at the moment that I can see. So I think that we need to go on. So if anybody's any councillor have got any objections or abstains against that, please indicate. No. Is those recommendations okay? Thank God. Did you get that, Paul?
Agreed.
That's all fine. I mean, it was to receive an update, so we can't make recommendations at this stage. It's just a way forward, so we're absolutely fine to proceed with those.
I'll write a recommendation for the next full council then going forward.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Right, as I say, we've done 5 and 6. Item 7, to receive a report from the Rossborough Play area inspections. This again came in before the August meeting, but this came in before or around the time that the play areas were able to reopen back in July. So a lot of the items that has been picked up by this report have been implemented by the ground staff and fixed, but it was taken at the time that all the items highlighted on Witchwood Road weren't going to be done, because a few weeks later we were going to start the development on building the new play area that you might all see that's being developed at the moment. So that play area didn't reopen and was closed until the development. Has anybody got any questions on that report? Town Clerk, yeah.
Sorry, just something I'd like to raise. In terms of Cogley Lane, it's been that balancing act throughout of trying to evaluate how much money, we need to spend, versus, trying to evaluate when the play park will be upgraded. But obviously that's on a longer time scale than we thought. So we have some old equipment on Crow Close, so finding spare parts has been somewhat of a challenge, and we're looking to find contractors who can maybe do some short-term welding work for us to move some of those items along.
Okay.
Yeah.
Councillor Stockwood and then Councillor Leach.
Thank you very much. So you pointed out that some of the items have been completed. Do we have a schedule for completing all of the items that we're looking to do? And the second question is, there was an item raised about the Witchwood sports hoop thing, flooring. You got the maintenance budget for £6,000. Are we looking to get 3 quotes for that for the next committee to consider? The next Recreation Amenities Committee to consider. So
we had a quote on that flooring, in order to get an idea on what it was, but that's is going to be part of some other discussions with regards to play areas that's going on, that the committee or the group that's been set up for Witchwood Road, in order to progress what's happening there. There's further discussions on what take forward.
Okay.
Sorry, could I just, Councillor Williams, I just need to take 5 minutes. Are you able to proceed?
Yeah.
Thank you. I'll be back as soon as I can. Apologies.
It might be the fireworks. Maybe fireworks are going off. Poor dog.
Councillor, I think we have got that. I think there was like kind of a completion report. Did you see that has been done? I did request a report of what's been completed, but just opening it up, you are right that there isn't actually anything on there to say when a lot of the others are going to be completed. So yeah. I will request that. And I think this is kind of an ongoing live document, as they say, that it might be then we can review to the next one to see what those timescales and that, because like what's been outlined on Cogley Lane, there's a few of those that they're going to have to find out who can do some of the items and to fix those. Councillor Leach, you had a question. I'll try and my best to.
No, it's on the play parks. My concern is that, from what I gather, ROSPA weren't very happy when they did their inspection. There were quite a few problems with one of them. Well, one of the pieces of equipment, I'm not sure where it was. I think it's Wallenfels, has something missing and is liable to collapse at any time if it was used. Do we know what that is? It's
nothing was brought to my
safety.
attention. Nothing that was brought to my attention of anything that was deemed to be collapsing. And I think if something was deemed to be collapsing, it would be highlighted as high risk.
I'm just trying to find
and there wasn't
out
anything,
where it was and what it was.
Mate, when the town clerk returns, she might have a better idea what that could be.
Mr. Chairman, I'm just looking at that. Would it be item 12, the basket swing, where it says not fitted at manufacturer, refer to manufacturers?
Yeah.
On Wallenfels,
I'm just looking at what I've got here. Looking at Cogley Lane, Wychwood, Wallenfels. I'm looking at the items, the action taken, completed and outstanding work. Separate to the ROSPA report, the bench in the toddler area at Wallenfels. No, that's Orchard Avenue. Wait a minute. Some of the screws are having to be tightened up, and things are having to be loosened. And looking at what I've got in front of me, and the climbing wall had to be laminated. There was a quote needed to remove the climbing rope. And there was a separate ROSPA report about the bench in the toddler area at Orchard Park.
Yeah, the bench at Orchard Park has been fixed and reset.
Right.
There was the stacking sticks on the Orchard Park as well, which was highlighted that there was some items that were loose that have been fixed, and the posts have been reset as well for that restructure.
Yeah. The other thing that came up with the surfacing at Orchard was a black residue was coming off onto shoes and stained shoes.
That's later on in the agenda.
Yeah, these are what I'm looking at the moment. What's the other one?
Yeah, that will be on later on in the
okay.
agenda.
Cheers. Thanks, Gareth.
So
I'll come back to that when that comes up then.
Yeah, well, I'll be given as part of the agenda. I'm going to be given an update on what's happened on the toddler area. Thank you. Just wait for the town clerk to scan back.
Yeah, Nova, she jumps up to try and gets the fireworks. Other dogs are like really scared. She's like, I want it, I want it.
My cats are petrified of
Oh
fireworks.
yeah,
They hide.
yeah, cats. Yeah, I had a cat. Yeah, he was petrified. I had to get him in like around about 3 in the afternoon. You know, just before it gets dark and things, before the fireworks go off. Treated it like a baby. Bless it.
Yeah, one of my cats used to sit out and watch them until the bangs went off, and that was it, and he was in. And the other two just hide. I don't know what anybody's views are on fireworks being sold in the shops. I know Co-op and Sainsbury's don't sell them anymore.
Please be mindful that this is being recorded still.
Yeah,
This
it's
committee
just that
and everything. I understand, but I wouldn't want you to start conversations on the meeting where it's being recorded and everything.
Mr. Chairman, Councillor Stockwood, are you able to give the updates for Orchard Play area?
Yes, I can. I can
Shall we
move on.
accept then that we proceed with that? I mean, you've got a 19-item agenda, and we're at
yeah
at 8:30.
Sure.
Well, 8:20. So I just perhaps if we continue with what we can continue with and come back to items.
Yeah, I just wasn't sure with the town clerk not being present. So when Shannon comes back, I'll get her just to clarify on what item of equipment Councillor Leach you're thinking. Oh, she's in.
Oh, there we go.
Oh, right. Just starts 2 questions on it. We had about a schedule of when the items are looking to be fixed that are kind of outstanding from the Rossby report. And Councillor Leach wasn't sure about a piece of equipment that was highlighted by the Rossby report that could collapse. I wasn't aware of anything.
No, I'm not aware of anything. Councillor Leach, can you?
It's something to do with us on one of the pieces of if I've got it right, at Vallenfels, there's a piece of equipment that Rossby was looking at that was being used. It might have been a swing of some sort that has a post missing that's integral to keeping it safe.
I'm not aware. I'll certainly look into it, but I'm not aware of anything on the Rossby report.
There was nothing highlighted to me when we were looking at reopening the play areas.
Sorry, can I ask the root of this information?
No, it was just that something that came up. I was looking at that's that one. It was just something that was mentioned, that was all. I was a bit concerned for children's safety, not on that one, it's on the other folder. Please bear with me if I can find it.
Right.
Right,
I'll move on to item 8. Is Councillor Shelton with us?
Oh,
here he is. Okay. Right. Go to. I think with that, if you can find out what piece of equipment it is, Councillor Leach, and just email through to the office to find with which one it is. Once you find out, but as I say, and Sharon's indicated that we're not sure of anything that is fitting that kind of that description and concern on the report.
Okay.
Okay. Item 8, Orchard play area. Yeah, the toddler area has now reopened. After liaising with the company with regards to the black residue, we've had assurances from them that it's safe and everything like that, and it's kind of come up from the wet pour substance due to not like lower levels of use, basically because of it being the park being closed due to COVID restrictions. This kind of stuff build up over time, and where you get footfall on a play area, it then minimises it coming up and weathers away. Whereas because of it being closed and that for so long, and then when people started using it, it then came up. But there's nothing in the substance or anything like that from that we've been told it would pose a risk or anything like that, and the situations should get better. But of course, the ground staff will be monitoring it on their inspections of the play area when they go in. As part of this substance, it did blacken some of the green areas on the play area, and some of it did go on to some of the equipment, which we've managed to get the company to come out and clean and jet wash the site in order to
Sorry, that was almost like a game of charades. I do apologise. And
it's all right.
So it was sealed as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it, in order to clean it off, and the wet pour was then resealed in order to limit this stuff from coming out as well. So it was resealed. So we just got that to note. And then there's also to note repair to the trampoline edging around there. I can't remember the full details of it. Has that been done? I can't remember if
That
it's
repair has been made. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's all been repaired. And in regards to site security, we are starting to go out to look at different types of fencing or gating options for the site, because essentially it's not fencing the whole site, because it has got fencing all the way around. It's more the access points in order to replace the existing fence from Orchard Road. And then also kind of a pedestrian gate there, and some gate at from Granby Court. There is areas around the site that might need to be looked at potentially, with some fencing that might be could be used as a public access, even though the majority of the sides of it is private residential. But it has been highlighted that there might be some areas that people have scaled over fencing in order to gain access, so that would need to be looked at there. There is with the group of councillors who've been given this delegated authority to progress this, there is questions that still need to be looked at on when the site closes and the impact on that with local residents who may, like dog walkers, may want to use it. What time then does it get closed, and who by? That still need to be investigated and research done on practices that are done elsewhere by other councils. And of course also is, if anybody is on site when it comes to locking up time, is what powers there is in order to for them people to get people to leave, the site for it to be locked up, because of course we can't really lock anybody inside the site either. Okay, there's any questions on Orchard play area from anybody? No. Right, so I'll go on to item 8B for Wychwood Road. Must apologise for the length of time that this play area has been under development. That initially it was 3 to 4 weeks, and potentially we're now coming up to 4. But we've had a few issues that and items that of concern that we've had to raise with the contractor in order to make it safe to play on and to open. So and those are being ironed out and looked at, and also waiting on some other reports and that in order for it to be open safely, and also to do with landscaping as well. That there's as people might see if they walk up to the site, that there's been quite a lot of landscaping and turfing done on the play area, which we're having to make sure that that's taken hold, ready for when it opens, because ultimately if you get people walking over the turf, it's just not going to grow and can die in all the hard work that's done. So hopefully in the not too distant future we should be in a position to make an announcement with regards to the play area, but at the moment those discussions are still ongoing, and areas are still being monitored in order to see when we can make those announcements. But I must say is with all of the installation of it, I must thank everybody at in the offices and the ground staff for all the hard work to get us. I know it's gone through 10 weeks, but all their effort in liaising with the company and our ground staff on doing some landscaping works at the site, but also fulfilling all their other duties for the residents of Bingham around the town as well. That it is notable and it is commendable that the ground staff have been able to do that as well this week. Well, not just this week, in the recent weeks. The contingency budget we has been used around the bank slide. It was looked at when it was installed was to go and do wet pour around it. Otherwise, with children running up and down the banks, it's just going to weather away a lot of the landscape, the turf and the grass, that we would just potentially get like a mudslide at the side of it. So it was felt after site visits to do wet pour there in order to help with the longevity of the banks. It's been done to 4 zones as well. Tank, have you got anything on that?
Sorry, the only thing I was going to add, Councillor Williams, was if you wanted me to update the committee on the amount that was spent from the contingency budget for that.
Yes, please.
Yeah, so it was £1,887.14 plus VAT. So just to make you aware.
And there has also been some money spent from the contingency budget around landscaping for turf and topsoil, which we have been assured that as a council we will be reimbursed for the turf. So the only bit of money ultimately that has been spent from the contingency budget is on the wet pour, and I think the turf and topsoil would roughly be about £500, I think, for it. But if you go to this site, certainly it's you can see the difference. It is money well spent, even though we're being reimbursed it. And as I say, with the with the opening of it, as I've touched on with the installation, we are waiting on a few more details from the contractor Compan, and items, and ground staff have got to review the landscaping to see how the grass has taken hold, because of the wet weather that we've had recently, just to make sure that that has been hot. So that there is reviews and discussions going on that has been with this play area more or less going on daily, at times, with regards to what's happening. And as I say, hopefully soon we'll be able to make an announcement to the residents of Bingham on what's going to be happening with it. Any questions to do with Wychwood Road from anybody? Town Clerk, you got your hand raised.
Sorry, I was just going to add, in terms of the work that needs to happen before it can open. Obviously, Compan need to, drop the Harris fencing. There is just a few fixes that they will do when they take down the Harris fencing. In terms of the town council's work, they want to do some a grass cutting so that the landscaping all blends. We have a sign to put up, a large sign to put up, and then this is almost counterintuitive, but obviously given what's coming in terms of moving into very high tier for COVID, we just get the swings up. We're going to have to take some swings down, and the basket seat, and we're going to have to tape off effectively one of the pieces of play equipment in the toddler area. So that work's to do, which is frustrating. We just get it all installed, and then we're going to have to take it out for COVID restrictions. That was just to make you aware that there is some work to be done to finally go ta-da. It's open for everyone.
Any questions from any councillors? No. Right. 8C, Cogley Lane, to receive an update and agree any further actions. I haven't had anything, any updates in relation to this, and I've been liaising with Councillor Mosser as well in case he has had any updates, and unfortunately he hasn't, and I don't, and unless Town Clerk, Sherrod.
Sorry, I was just going to, when I heard Councillor Moscow was trying to contact the play park consultant, I didn't put a call in, so I haven't followed up as a new Councillor Moscow was.
Okay. Councillor Leach.
I've got a copy of the ROSPA annual inspection, and it said one of the things I was talking about was the climbing wall at the base of it. If I'm looking at this right, the timber is rotting, so those have to be replaced, and the climbing wall base is rotting along with the laminate damage to other sections. That was the one I was looking at. It has a low risk level, but it's scored at 6, whatever that is. And there's quite a few different things, but that's what that's one of the ones I was looking at vaguely in the break I had.
Okay, we'll take a look at that, and we'll come back to you, Councillor Leach.
Yeah, it's rather
just
a big
able
one,
to,
and I've got a copy of it.
If we just send that update on what's been once the investigating's done, to the members of the committee, so
yeah,
just aware for that. Thank you. Right, is there any other questions on the play areas and what's going on at the moment? No. Right, so there isn't anything that we got to recommend or anything, is there, from it all? I don't think. No. Right. Item 9. To consider matters in relation to team provision and agree further actions. So I take it, Councillor Leach, over to you.
Thank you, Gareth. At the moment, we're trying to get hold of Barratt Homes and David Wilson Homes, whether they may have a bit of land left they could spare for us for the provision of the skate park. The other thing that came up was, you know, where the contaminated land site is quite a large space for car parking. We wondered if there was any way possible that we might be able to have a bit of that.
I think that question would need to go to Policy and Resources Committee, because the car park subcommittee is a subcommittee of Policy and Resources.
Yeah.
So I think that kind of question would need to go there.
Right.
But to my knowledge, the whole site has been earmarked as a car park.
It's huge though, and we wouldn't want a lot of space.
It is, but as I say, that would have to go. It would have to be considered,
oh, I know that.
Considered there, because that piece of land doesn't come under this committee. So I think that request from the organisation would have to go to that committee.
Also, at the moment, it looks like what we were hoping to put on at the leisure centre is had to go on hold because of us now going into tier 3. So we're going to have a look later on. Is it 28 days before anything is looked at again with tier 3? So hopefully in this next 28 days, I'm going to be doing some running around and via the computer and getting older people. But at the moment, we have got a contact at Barratt Homes that John Lewis's good lady Anne is going to contact to see if they've got some space in that green space that's allocated for play area.
Okay.
Yeah. One of our girls who is in the group, she actually now runs the Zoom meetings for Bombers. So that's one positive. One of the younger girls, she's 18, 19, she actually runs the meetings, because what we want to do is eventually involve a lot more of them so that they can get used to the idea, and eventually we'd like them to meet with whoever would be willing to meet with them. So at the moment, everything's on hold with Bombers, apart from what we can do on the computer. Obviously, we're not allowed to go anywhere much and meet up, but whatever happens, I will keep the Recs and Amenities group informed on any positives. But at the moment, we're just like everybody, stuck in the middle, going nowhere.
Thank you very much for the update. Is there any questions from any councillors?
Anyone got a question? Please, if I can, I'll try and answer it.
No. Okay. Right, we'll go on to item 10, to receive the recreation amenities budgets to Q2, ending the 30th of September 2020. As you might see from the last week during August, that was to Q1, but the Deputy Clerk has now produced it for Q2 to be considered at this meeting. And if anybody's got any questions in relation to it, the one thing I will highlight that has been highlighted to myself by the Deputy Clerk who's done it is in relation to the hiring of a mower and vehicle and such, that quotes coming in from companies haven't been very forthwith. We've had a total of 3 companies come and do a demonstration at the council, and the first 2 companies that were really quick to respond to come and do a demonstration haven't replied to any correspondence from the deputy clerk in relation to getting a quote, whereas the last company have. So at the moment we have only got 1 quote to go on, and due to that, it's been highlighted it's difficult to try and factor in for next year's budget on what that will be, and also with the money in order to be into the expense. Is there any questions on the budget so far?
Not that I can think of.
Right. Item 11, to review the annual tree survey report and to consider quotation for recommended work. If I'll just go and find it on mine. Yeah, we've had the tree the document, and when I had a look through that, I think there's like one that's been highlighted as high priority, whereas the majority of these are low. There has been highlighted to myself of some potential trees that might need to be looked at on the linear walk that Councillor Shelton has highlighted to me. So I'm not sure if I was trying to look at this report to actually see if they might have been highlighted in this, but it hasn't got grid references. It's got what 3 words locations, trying to figure out which one it is and where it is.
Chairman,
yes, go ahead.
Interrupt you on that. The trees are within 200 yards of the Tisby Road Bridge, and they're arching over, and some of them, the condition when they looked a couple of months ago didn't look very good, and they were concerned. It wasn't ones that we could have had a go at. It would need a proper tree surgeon to sort the top canopy out. There
is number 18. I don't know if this is the tree. It's got like from 100 metres from a brick, or there's another one 40 metres. So I don't know. Town Clerk?
Sorry, just to jump into the linear side of the trees. Certainly the ground staff went along there and had a look and inspected the trees, and basically has confirmed what Councillor Shelton said. He was going to check the tree survey report to see if this was part of the programme of works that our tree surgeon had suggested or not. So he hasn't come back to me with that information, but I did ask him if he would check that out. But they have been out there to take a look at them.
Because I will be asked on the first Wednesday of next month, and have a meeting as to what the state of play is with the trees, because obviously there is some health and safety concern with some of them.
Well, I mean, obviously, if our tree surgeon has been out and taken a look at them, we're normally guided by what he has to say in terms of his schedule. I know, just to update Councillor Williams, we basically asked one of the tree surgeons to provide a price for us for all of the tree works in the tree survey. And the reason why we did that, we're juggling various projects with the ground staff at the moment, and as you know, the ground staff start to take on more tree work themselves, but you know, there's a backlog of projects and jobs to do, so we're going to look at planning those out. So in the immediate term, we asked a tree surgeon to price for everything that was in the tree report. And that is coming out as 5 days of work at just under £4,000 plus VAT. If you then go back to the budget, that was set up, and she said desperately looking when she looked at it earlier and found it straight away. Trees and shrub maintenance. We have a budget of £3,000, of which we've spent 595 already. So we need to evaluate how much of this work we can do in-house, if any, and if potentially we'd want to then, or how much of this we may want to then put out to a tree surgeon to get the work done, which would be on top of anything potentially that's needed at the Linear, which hasn't been highlighted by the tree surgeon, but that's not to say obviously situations change.
I think if it's those trees at the Linear could be looked at just to see like the state and correspond with this report, just in case they are highlighted and what it said at the time of the report, because of course, like you say, this is a snapshot of what the tree state is when the guy goes around, and the following day we could have high winds and makes it dangerous, and it's gone from low to high. So yeah, certainly if the ground staff are able to go and have a look at those and that, and then as well, I think it might be if we have a recommendation on what is felt by them of what can be done with regards to this document, and what they can't, and then he's going with what items they can't do in order to get a quote for that, because certainly, as you say, it's out of the budget now of what, so we would have to go to polishing resources for all that. Councillor Stockwood, you've had your hand up.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. With regards to how much the Linear Park was surveyed, it said in note number 4 on page 11 that they walked as far as the next bridge southeast of the A52. So they have walked a section of it, which is, to my mind, the most tree-lined section. So it is highly likely that the tree surgeon has checked the trees that are the most overhanging, but I'm sure that fact will be checked. The new feature in the tree survey this year is that you can, there was a file provided that allows you to actually find all of the trees on a map. And well, with regards to a quote for all of the works, in the first instance, 6, 7, 8, 9 and 10 are on the old A46. It's not my understanding that we own those trees. Although I'd have to check the title register and it'd be clear, but I'm not sure that our land goes all the way up to the edge of the road from the sound bund through. So I think the first step would be to double check that. With regards to tree number 21 and 23, which is which are listed as Mill Hill Road, the council has limited land ownership there, and those trees aren't in our ownership. They're outside of the piece of land that we own at the top of Tithley Road. So they would actually be best addressed through the property development company. The builders, who I think still control that element of land, and certainly did when Rushcliffe Borough Council tried to install a curbside glass recycling facility at that location.
Sorry, could you read the tree numbers again, Councillor Stockwood?
21 and 23, they're listed as Mill Hill Road. If you look at the top of the west side of Tithley Road, there's a small mound which actually marks the end of our piece of land. Around 3 or 4 metres between Mill Hill Road and our land is not actually in our ownership, nor is the gap between the development of the first street and our land. There's a clearly defined boundary, and then there's an element of grass to the west of what we own. So I would very much check our title registers for trees 6, 7, 8, 9 and 10 and 21 and 23. The tree marked 43, which is on the banks, is actually on the small orchard on the north side, which is leased to another gentleman and is not in our ownership. If it's an issue that affects the highway, then it would be for highways to address to the landowner. We don't lease that section or have ownership of that land. So again, I would suggest that 43 is best addressed along with 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 by bringing them to the attention of the Highways Authority. And 44, we don't lease Crow Close. We only lease the element of the play area at Crow Close. The tree surgeon has inspected the entire field edge of Crow Close, and we have no land ownership or lease regarding that property, that tree. So, which is one of the highest priorities that he identified. So again, if that tree is in the ownership of the field at Crow Close, then it would be to contact the Southwell Diocese regarding their land. Would be one way forward. So I think that there's a number of elements that could be identified as a way to reduce the cost of the quote, because I'm not sure that some of these trees are actually in our ownership and would be best addressed by actually contacting the owner before we take action on them. I mean, we can legally chop anything that's overhanging our property, but to do works on other people's land is perhaps, while beneficial to Bingham, is something that the landowners should be addressing themselves, and does leave us in a difficult position if anything were to go wrong. So I'd like those elements of the tree survey to be inspected before the progress is made. Thank you very much. Oh, and finally, on 24, Langtree Garden posts, I would think would be a grounds maintenance task. These are at the edge of Langtree Garden, is the green space next to the railway station. There are a series of posts which is designed to stop people parking cars at the location. It's identified within the report that those posts should be repaired. I would think that that's a grounds maintenance task that needs to be done through our open space maintenance budget, separate to the tree survey. So I'd like to see that work be programmed in as well as the tree works. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Councillor Leach, if you still got a point to raise, otherwise I'll go to the town clerk.
If anyone hasn't got a copy of it, Andrew, do you need a copy of this? It's the official tree survey. Some of the responses that the tree people have put in are quite interesting, but some are not so good.
No, we should have. We would have got a copy of the survey.
Right. My concern is that although most of them are good and fair, there are some that are not so, and some that are collapsing.
And that's the work where just to understand what the ground staff's projects are going to be, the entire survey was sent out to be priced up for work, as Councillor Stockwood has pointed out, and questioned whether some of those trees are within the town council's ownership, where, you know, the land has, you know, our tree surgeon has inspected our trees for a number of years. So it's a case of just establishing what exactly is in our ownership and what isn't, how much work we do ourselves, and how much potentially we have to put out to a tree surgeon. But simply this was put out just to get a rough steer of costs. It doesn't mean to say that all of that budget will be spent doing this particular work, because it may not all be valid, as Councillor Stockwood has pointed out.
So potentially maximum, it would cost us maximum 4K.
Yeah.
But now we've already highlighted things to.
Yeah, you know, there are areas to be looked at to reduce some of that cost.
Well, I think if for the next recreation amenities, if it can be looked at and then brought back to the committee, so we've got like the idea of what trees from this report are ours, because of course if councillors are looking at it, and as Councillor Stockwood's highlighted, the one that's high level might not actually be ours, and that could be a pricey repair or maintenance.
Yeah.
So yeah, if we're just able to get an update on all of that for the next recreation meeting.
Yeah. I mean, when I've just looked at some of this, I know for Tree 44, which Councillor Stockwood has mentioned, there has been a question mark put against the ownership of that tree. So that has been flagged as a potential. And in terms of the quote, there is no cost associated to it.
Right.
But it all helps build a picture.
Right. Yeah, we don't need a recommendation or anything like that. Just
fine.
Just to come back for the January. It's been stated tonight rec meeting. Item. If there's no further questions on that, Councillor Shelton, you still got your hand up. If that is a historic hand.
You're on silent.
Thank you. Was it a historic hand?
It was left up by mistake, yeah.
That's not a problem, thank you. I tried to receive an update on the allotments and further actions. As we back, I think in July, myself, the Deputy Clerk and the Town Clerk met with, if Town Clerk can refresh the memory of the actual title of the person. But he was from the Borough Council in order to discuss the land and the border issues of the allotments and a lot of concerns that had been raised by allotment holders to do with the boundary line and trees and hedges and everything like that, which we went through on site. Since that, a lot of the works that were going to be done there now, because of and ground staff, aren't able to be done. So potentially to look at what can be and what we might have to get an external source in order to come and do those works there.
The only thing else I would add to that, Councillor Williams, is our ground staff met with representatives from the allotments, and we've identified the work, some of which potentially we can do, some of would definitely fall to a tree surgeon, and it's just understanding that project plan for the winter in terms of what we're able to achieve, and it goes back to just planning the work with the ground staff. And what potentially may have to be looked to be contracted out. So I'll have more of an idea of that when I meet with the ground staff to discuss the projects.
Okay. Is there any question on the allotments from anybody? Right. Item 13 to receive an update on Linear Park. Agree further actions. We've touched on the tree issue on Linear Park on item 11, but to just go with some of the other items from Linear Park. There's been two issues with steps locations. The previous steps locations that came to this committee is having to be looked at, is having to go out to potential contractors that can fulfill that work, as are now existing ground staff are unable to do those works because of only being 2 guys now. So it's having to instigate to get quotes for those, and also some of the steps going up by Tifby Bridge have had to be repaired due to damage which have been done recently by the ground staff, whilst they were also doing the landscaping at Witchwood Road as well. And also from Councillor Shelton, which is going to be investigated on where they actually are, is that we potentially may have gained some concrete steps as well along Linear Walk that has only just come to light and been unearthed, but not sure exactly where they are in relation to our boundary, unless Councillor Shelton knows anything more on where on that.
I believe I sent you a photograph and also the what 3 words location of those steps.
Yeah.
The other item that hopefully will be mentioned tonight is the survey of the bridges.
Yeah, I was just going to go onto those. Yeah, it's it had been that those concrete ones had been mentioned to the deputy clerk on review when she'd informed me whilst the town clerk was on leave about these steps. So that's where the investigation needs to come with exactly where they are and if they fall under our jurisdiction. So I got to liaise with the deputy clerk on those on that what 3 words and location, so she can have a look at the map and everything. And then also is about a bridge survey, which would would propose in order to put into kind of the budgets for next year with the project in order to get that underway and looked at. Town Clerk, you got your hand up.
Thank you. Just in terms of the bridge surveys, I know a couple of years ago I certainly went along the full length of the linear with a representative from VIA to inspect, because it's not just the bridges, there are other structures as well. So I climbed down through woods to look at small culvert bridges and everything else. So it's not quite as straightforward as just the bridges. I know at the time the VIA guy said the bridges looked to be fine, and obviously he was telling me some of the advantages of going with VIA. And 2 of the bridges aren't under the town council's ownership in any case. So certainly VIA were of the opinion at the time they come up with a suggestion of an inspection regime, but that can be followed up with other contractors in terms of giving a quote. But like anything, this is time consuming because we need to go the whole length of the linear with the contractors to show them these other structures and bridges and everything else. And obviously getting out there at the moment's not the easiest, given restrictions to travelling along there with people to show, how do you travel right to the end at the moment kind of thing with other contractors. So that's just something to bear in mind.
If I can come back on that, I know there's a small working group of about 5 or 6 of us who do work on the linear park, so it just depends on the number of people that is walking are in the group that goes at any particular one time.
So, sorry, I don't understand what you mean.
We have a working group that meets more than one Sunday a month, up to 6 people, which is within the current regulations as it's outside. But obviously as we're coming to tier 3, it might alter things again.
You mean the groups from the Friends of Linear
right.
Park?
There's a group of 5 or 6 of us. Some Sundays go out doing various bits of work along there. So it depends on how many people's going, and the contractors, how many people and the council staff are actually walking along that route.
Sorry, in terms of walking, I was talking about using transport to go along there, because obviously there's not, we don't have that much time to take different contractors up and down, and there's a fair bit of scrambling around and down to get to some of these structures. Sorry, I wasn't appreciating the walking element of it, Councillor Shelton. I was thinking in terms of going along there in transport to do it.
Okay. Any questions?
The only other point I would like to make is that some of the bridges we're telling people to go under. Now, whereas the bridges might not be our responsibility, we have to make sure that obviously we're directing people underneath the bridge. We're not directing them in an unsafe direction. when it comes to surveying the area. It may be, they may highlight that a bridge that people walk under along the park might not be our responsibility, but at least if it's surveyed and they say it's okay, if anything did happen, at least it covers the council to say that they'd have the survey to make sure that the route was safe.
Can I just come on that? It's been highlighted by the deputy clerk when she was looking at the steps and those concrete steps and everything, and a suggestion from her is potentially to have kind of an aerial map, like a drone map of some sort, along of Linear Park, with some of these elements and features and all this kind of thing highlighted on there with the town council's boundary, and then from that is actually depicting on what is under town council jurisdiction and what isn't under town council jurisdiction. Because like that, we've just been highlighting about the trees, that there's trees that have been highlighted on the report that aren't town councils, and we're not wanting to do works on those because of those. Likewise with the bridges, I think that's going to be more is to find out from their owners, are they safe, and when was their last report done by the owners of said bridge, in order to then, like that, reassure our understanding that, like you say, people from the town who are going along this route and going underneath and through and along different elements of Linear Park that are owned by different bodies, that it is all safe for them to do so as one element. So the whole of the park is then safe. So I think this is kind of a piece of work that we might have to liaise. And I think what I would do is a recommendation to come back to the next committee, is if we could find out if the costs in relation to do that kind of a drone footage, if there's people out there that might do that kind of work there, just so we can get a better understanding of where stuff is and things like this, because sometimes it's being highlighted quite repeatedly that it's with locations of things, not knowing where and is it in our boundary and that kind of stuff. And maybe have that mapped with what 3 words as well. I don't know. Councillor Leach, you had your hand up for.
Thinking outside of the box. Why don't we why doesn't the council get one of those drone machines ourselves, and then we can survey it all ourselves? Or is that too drastic?
Not quite sure what think it's just going to be the one-off use that we would have for that. I don't think there'd be the other uses necessarily of it, but it's part of somebody doing a package and that. But it was something that is like that the deputy clerk mentioned about that in order to progress some of these issues on Linear Walk, on Linear Park, as a starting point in order to get a better understanding. Councillor Shelton?
Yeah, it's just, has somebody got a dog that's snoring? Because I can hear that quite strongly over my speaker rather than your voice.
For once, it's not my dog, actually. Surprise, surprise. It usually is, but he's not making an appearance. About to keep dashing out, I'm afraid, though, this evening.
It's not mine because I don't have one.
No, I haven't got one. I haven't even got a snoring cat in here either.
No, mine too are downstairs.
So if so I think from that, if we're able to go into the next meeting, if we're able to find out if costs for potential mapping, like aerial shots of the linear in order to map out where items are and to get a better understanding, and also it is also, I think, is to make inquiries, potentially get some quotes if we're able to get people to come. I don't in order to look at the steps in order to repair those as well.
I know certainly we've pursued some quotes. I don't know where they are in terms of getting 3 quotations, and I think one company certainly we approached had come back and said no, they didn't have any capacity to help us. So I'll have to check with the office whether they've contacted 3 companies who are able to submit quotations.
I think this, Mr. Chairman, the Smart Steps, I think it's a matter of a complete replacement. You won't be able to repair what there is there because it's fairly worn.
Yeah, well, but it is to get some quotations on the works there at those steps, as ground staff have been able to do the ones at the Tifby bridge.
I know last year, I think it was, I went out with Neil and he understood the type of steps that we're asking about, and also, you know, the exact location.
Okay. Is there any further questions or any other, if there's any objections to those or against those recommendations? No. Right. So, right, on to item 14 to consider the residents' request to reduce. It's been put down as 2 sycamore trees, but it's actually 2 Let me just get the email up. It's actually 2. Where is it? 2 Norway maples in question. With this, please don't with any of the location or anything of where these trees are. I know we've all had the email which has got some advice from our tree surgeon where the deputy clerk is referred to, but please, if we can just talk about the principle of reducing the coverage of trees into a garden rather than the actual location in the town of where they are, because of course this isn't a public session of the meeting, and that's quite personal information of where this issue has been raised. But going on the advice, it is done that if we do deem to have any work done on these trees, is for our own surgeon to do the works rather than the resident sourcing their own, because ultimately these are our trees, and they are our property, and they are the town's property, that we wouldn't want somebody dictating on those trees and it's the classic situation. If they take too much away, we can't put it back. So kind of we would want the hold on what is being done. And I think from going from the recommendation from the tree surgeon is that then that might not be causing a lot of shade into the garden and at the property, and doing some cutting could cause issues to the canopy of the trees and their appearance and everything. But it's just getting the thoughts of the committee. Councillor, are you wanting to say anything, or is it historic from the last? Okay. Councillor Stockwood.
Thank you very much. I think the email, or halfway through the stream, where it's spelt out that the tree surgeon's advice is a limited set of works for £250, would be. I think we should follow our tree surgeon's advice, thank the residents for expressing their views, but having taken that on board, we'll follow our tree surgeon's advice, is what I would suggest. As listed within the paperwork, it talks about some minimal target pruning and the canopy work that you talk about, I think. So I suggest we go with tree surgeon advice. Thank you.
Town clerk, got your hand raised.
Yes, sorry, I was just going to clarify. So we're saying potentially in terms of it's our tree surgeon, we'd like to undertake the work, but the cost incurred would fall to the resident.
If Chairperson wants to pay for it, that's
they have expressed that they would be willing to pay any costs.
Yeah.
So yes.
I mean, certainly that's how we've worked before, where a resident, you know, this isn't as if it's setting a precedent. This has happened previously where a resident has wanted some work carried out and it's been our tree because it's affected impacted their garden, and they have successfully used our tree surgeon and incurred the cost themselves. So I just wanted to check it was the same principle. Yep.
Okay. Yep. So I have that ultimately as a recommendation, which will take it that Councillor Stockwood's put forward. Anyone? And I'll second that. If we've got anybody against or abstaining, Councillor Leach, do you wish to?
No, I was just going to say I would go with what John said. I'd second it if he wanted.
Okay. Right. Please bear with me, councillors. I've just lost my agenda. Item 15, to note the hire of additional vehicle for the ground staff. This has been carried out due to the ride-on mower having to go back. It's at the end of its lease, and due to COVID-19 working restrictions for the ground staff, they can't share the same vehicle because it's not adequate for them to distance in the vehicles, especially the Gator, because it's quite small confined space. So they were using the one ground staff was using the ride-on mower and the other the Gator. So from that, a second vehicle had to be sourced, which we've now got a small, is it a Peugeot or a small van type vehicle, not of a Ford Transit size, but more of to give an idea, more of a Postman Pat sized van. As a common van that people might know. Rather than giving you the specific of what model it is, that you might not know what it is either. But that has been enabled the staff to carry on their duties around the town by having their own vehicle in order to go about and to distance from each other whilst they're doing the works. At number 16, to receive an update and review further actions in relation to the large ground maintenance equipment. As I touched on the budget item earlier on item 10, again, this is a lot with the mower prices and getting the quotations in from that. From this as well is looking at what we would kind of want to do as a council going forward with our works, and especially with the larger equipment that often we've had a ride-on mower, or and then we've also had, or we got currently is a tractor that goes about, which the tractor at the moment is only used down at Win Hill because of the size of it, whereas the ride-on mower is used, can be used at all locations that we currently grass cut. So it's kind of, there's a lot of different options and combinations that can be done with maintenance equipment. So I recommend is that a meeting is set up with the ground staff in order to discuss with them what kind of what equipment they would want going forward. And please note as well that they, again, it's opinions, even their opinions might differ from each other, and all that because of their preferences and working methods. But it's kind of to get an idea. I think it's best for councillors to get an idea of what works they have, rather than kind of taking an item on for 2 weeks as a trial and going, that's really, really good in the summer, but when it comes to winter, it's impractical for the summer job, for the winter jobs and all that. So it's trying to think of machinery all year round, if we're going to be investing in these kind of items. So is there anybody who I certainly would be willing to go on a meeting, and I suggested it's a virtual meeting if we can set that up, as the current restrictions, if the ground staff are able to do a virtual meeting, and if any other councillors on the committee would want to come on to it. Councillor Stockwood, you raised your hand, and I'll Councillor Leach afterwards.
Yeah, I'll come along.
Yeah.
Same
Councillor
here.
Leach. Right.
Same as John.
Rachel, I'll try and make it.
Yeah.
Pardon?
So depending on when it is, and I think if we can have kind of that invitation kind of thing put out to, I don't know if it needs to go out to other councillors or if it's to Councillor Money and Councillor Mosfer as the members of this committee and aren't in attendance.
I think you're starting potentially to look like a bit of a posse. I would keep it as a smaller group.
What? Just to the four that have indicated.
Yeah.
So I've got yourself down, Councillor Stockwood and Councillor Leach.
And then Councillor Sheridan.
And we'll sort out the logistics of getting the guys onto a virtual meeting.
Yeah, if it's able to. If not, then we'll have to have a look at some other methods.
A megaphone on Butfield.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
If it's like that, it's a big enough space that I think at the moment restrictions would allow.
Yeah.
But yes, we'll have a look at options. But I think there's a way forward in order to go, and with options is order to discuss with them as they use the equipment day to day, and the needs and how it around the town and all the practical things to get an idea of us going forward.
Because also as well, obviously, where we cut and maintain has changed somewhat. I mean, you know, there's the request for the rugby club now to do weekly cutting. That's taken up quite a bit of time to do that. So it's, you know, factoring, you know, changing requirements in there as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Is there any other comments on that one? Okay. Right. Number 17, to consider memorial benches in the cemetery and agree further actions. As you remember, this came from full council. So it's basically to agree with you of the memorial benches with where they are and how many, and then to consider alternative memorial ideas, which I think this kind of thing needs to be researched more on what other practices have done. One that's been highlighted is like rose bushes that can be done, but also we do have an existing memorial tower, as it described, in the cemetery as well, where memorials can be placed. Town Clerk, you've got your hand up.
Thank you. It was just to let you know that we've taken photographs of all the memorial benches now, and from what I recall of Neil saying to me this afternoon, there are 28 benches up there, so that's quite a complement of memorial benches. So the request is at the moment, we give permission at the last full council for one more memorial bench to go in. So it's a case of at the moment, if we're saying no more memorial benches whilst we're carrying out a review, this 29th bench for the resident that put forward that request, we'll proceed with that, but then no more after that. And then look at other memorial ideas, and it may be that, you know, you could put a memorial bench in another location, in a more appropriate location. You know, for instance, could there be something along the Linear, for instance? You know, I'm getting a very definitive shake of Councillor Shelton's head there. So you know, it's a case of not, you know, maybe it's a case of memorial benches are fine, but just not in the cemetery, and by the looks of it, not on Linear Park either. Where else they could potentially go, and then what other ideas for memorials could be brought in. So yes, we'll look at those and bring that back.
Councillor Leach.
What about a bench down in the precinct?
The precinct isn't owned by the town council.
Oh, so we couldn't put one there?
No, it's saying this. We would only be able to look at places where the town council owns, or is under our jurisdiction and that kind of thing.
Do we own the marketplace?
No, that's the borough council.
Oh, bugger. Outside the council offices?
Well, sorry, Councillor Leach, this would be a request that would come from a family to potentially put a memorial bench somewhere other than the cemetery. So I think we potentially need to suggest some places that the council would be happy for benches potentially to go, rather than, you know, so we need to be approached. It's not about the council putting benches in, it's potentially a family wanting a remembrance bench, basically.
Do we own any of the land where the new housing estates are going?
No.
No. It was going to be. We would have to review. We'd have to look at locations that that the town is under the town council's jurisdiction within the town, and see if they're appropriate for memorial benches. Because with the nature of memorial benches is often that the families like to go and sit on them and reflect on the past loved ones and that kind of thing. So it would then be mindful of where we suggest those locations that are appropriate, like the cemetery, in that kind of environment, that people are able to have that solace when they go to visit them. But also we've got to be mindful of that by putting them into a more public area, is where it is potentially of what could happen because of them being used by a lot more public, whereas in the cemetery often people who go there have kind of the same vested interest for visiting the location. Whereas somewhere like Butfield, you would have different people that would be going there to sit on it for reasons I described, but also just to either watch the football or watch the cricket, and they'll just see a bench and sit on it. So we've also got to be mindful of those kind of options.
Shame we haven't got a crematorium in Bingham. We could have one there.
Well, we don't need to consider that.
No, we won't be with a crematorium. That's a whole bigger kind of thing.
Because they have got benches in
recommendations.
Yes, they do, but that's kind of a thing that the borough council had been looking at was crematorium. So that's the scale of it of a council.
So apologies, Councillor Williams. So the recommendation out of that is we're agreeing that we're going to hold a review of the memorial benches, but there is to be no more memorial benches after the most recent one that council gave approval to, and we will be coming back to the committee with alternate memorial ideas.
I think the resolution from the full council was no more.
Yes.
I think it was just then put for us as a committee just to do the review.
Yeah.
So yeah, it might not need that bit because that was already decided at full council that no more should go in whilst the review's being taken place.
Right. Thank you for that clarification. Thank you.
Yeah. And then ideas from other practices, which the deputy clerk might have discovered some wonderful ideas from training that we don't know.
It's a whole project in itself, essentially. Yeah, pulling in the different ideas. Yeah.
Right. If anybody's is anybody against or abstain from that? Otherwise, take it. Carry. Right. So, item 18 to receive an update on litter bins at Win Hill and Butfield sites and consider further actions. I've brought this forward as you may recall that during the lockdown there was an increase. I think it was May bank holiday, that far back, that there was an increase in litter on Butfield from people gathering on there when they weren't necessarily able to go to the pubs and that and bars in the town, and using Butfield as a site to meet. The litter wasn't screwing all around the site. People were were considerate in what litter they were leaving. They were leaving it right by the bins, but it was just the sheer volume of litter that was there, and also because it wasn't in a bin, it sometimes if there was a bit of a wind, it did blow some of the loose items into bushes, and also across the field. So from that is to look at where we've got a site of bins at these two locations to make sure that they're in a prominent item to get with kind of footfall going through, and that the bins are of a size that are kind of adequate for needs and rubbish on there, and also that the type of bin means any litter that goes in and it doesn't blow back out, which has been highlighted by the ground staff, that some bins don't have lids and wind swirls inside them and lifts light items out and just blows them out again, so they've got to go and litter pick. Also one other which at Butfield there was, by liaising with the office, bins, the temporary event bins were placed on the field, the big large yellow ones that you might see at the at the Christmas and summer fairs, and that's where it did prove to be that they were used quite regularly with people putting rubbish in, and also because of them being bright yellow against a green background, people did see them in order to make use of them. Sadly, I think I did see some reports during the summer of litter being left on Butfield, even though about 200, 300 yards away there was a green bin or the yellow bin that we could have used. Also, one thing we've got to be mindful is that from going down at Win Hill, as my capacity as a coach there, there had been some littering on the play area there at Win Hill, and it was noted that there was no bin on that play area, which I did put a request in for a bin to be put there, and it was placed on the Monday, and come the Tuesday when the ground staff went to check the site, it had been set alight overnight, and used as a mini bonfire, which historically that's had what been done. So it's looking at a review that, to my knowledge and from being at Win Hill, there is only actually one litter bin on the site, whereas I think there's 3 dog bins on there. So it's just having a look at where the placement and that, as I say, of where they are. And also we've got to be mindful that some bins are ours and some are the borough council's as well on these locations. So it's just having an idea. Is there any questions on this from anybody? So happy for that review to be carried out and brought back to the committee. So, Councillor Stockwood, you're speaking, but you're muted.
Thank you very much. So
So
that's a review of the bins on Win Hill and Butfield.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Right. Thank you.
If there's any other locations that you think need to come under the review, it's just because these were the large open spaces that, because of the nature of the restrictions of COVID and people wanting to use outdoor open spaces as recreation areas, that's why there was an increase in the summer at Butfield, especially with people going down there, having picnics during the day and walking the dogs, and also just being able to get out into a big open space, so to get out their homes and that, which kind of increased a bit of a litter that people were then leaving there on the site, that the bins weren't adequate to take them. Councillor Leach.
Maybe we should have some notices put up by them to suggest people take, if they're not going to use them, then they take their own rubbish home with them. Common sense is, if you've got rubbish, find a bin, put it in. If you're not willing to do that, take it home to your own bin.
Sorry, I would just say, I'm afraid people who drop litter, unfortunately, Councillor Leach, don't tend to read notices.
Well, maybe they should be.
Yeah, well, sorry, that's my experience around that, where unfortunately you can put lots of litter bins out, but if somebody's going to litter, they're not going to take any notice of a sign, unfortunately.
It is also, as I say, it's not been from people necessarily dropping litter. Yeah. It's just been the sheer volume that has been left by people going and gathering on the sites, that the bin isn't adequate to take it. So they've put it in bags and boxes and left it at the base of the bins that are existing there, so for people to collect when the council does its rounds, to be collected. But sadly, because of this, it's then had kind of a knock-on effect, that it's, when wind gets up, it's blowing it about, and it's a bit of an eyesore until council workers are able to get there and remove it, that's what's been highlighted to myself. And in the first instance, it was thought that it was only a one-off occasion, and I went there because it was on the bank holiday, that it wasn't going to be with council staff, so I actually went myself and cleared it up, and had the assistance of a local business owner came and helped as well, who then took the rubbish away and put it into his bins in order to dispose of it. So it wasn't left until necessarily the Tuesday, once ground staff and council workers returned. Is there anything else on that? No. So I think if we recommend it on doing a review of the bins at Win Hill and Butfield. Councillor Shelton, do you think a review might be beneficial potentially at Linear, with an increased footfall of people wanting to go up and down?
I think up to the Tisby Road Bridge, and probably a short period up to where the 52 is, it could be. I'll have words at the meeting, and I'll feed that information to the clerk, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's
sure. The only other thing with the litter in the other areas is there is a small minority who think somebody else will clear it up after them.
Yeah.
And especially that ends up with being something that the dogs leave, which I think you find quite a bit of.
There's a thought.
Well, I did when we did the litter picking. I managed to fill a whole bag from the bushes around Win Hill.
Maybe those notices should say, like they do with the dogs, if you leave your litter, you will be fined this amount.
We won't take any notice, I'm afraid, son.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Right. So, is anybody abstaining or against that? No. Right. So,
thank you.
Right. going to confidential business to resolve that in view of confidential nature of business about to be transacted, the press and public be excluded for the remainder of the meeting.
Everybody in agreement? Oh, have we lost Councillor Shelton?
Yeah.
Oh.
The full left.
Can you hear me?
He's already gone, yes.
Connection's gone a bit funny.
I can still hear you, Gareth. Oh, we've lost Gareth now. I think we're going into confidential, councillors. Can I have a vote from the three of you, since we would still score it with the three?
Well,
are we in agreement?
I can hear you, but I just can't
But
see
course.
everybody.
Right. So, Councillor Stapleton, are you in agreement? Yes.
Agreed. Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Lee?
Yes.
And Councillor Williams?
Yes.
And we've lost everybody else, but good enough, we've got a quorum to go in there. Are you calling this meeting at the 21:45 in the public session? Okay, I will see the private session. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Bye.
In a bit.
Bye.